The crowd roared as the alien princess stepped into the great arena, her long silver hair catching the light of the twin suns. Thousands of voices echoed across the high stone walls, calling her name. She was their champion, undefeated in every duel she had fought. Her armor was light but strong, made of black plates lined with silver edges. She carried a curved blade that had spilled the blood of many challengers. Across the sandy floor, the gate opened again. A tall figure stepped out, a human. Armor was scratched and worn, with no sign of wealth or beauty in its design. It was made for war, not for showing off. He held a straight steel sword and a simple round shield. The crowd grew quieter. Few had ever seen a human, and even fewer had seen one in combat. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Today's duel, Princess Kayla of the Shivan Empire against Earth's champion, Commander Rylan. Kayla narrowed her eyes. She had heard of humans before, the strange warriors from a far-off world who fought without fear, but she doubted they could match her speed and skill. She was the fastest duelist in her empire. She stepped forward, her bare feet brushing the warm sand, her weapon raised. Rylan's gaze was calm, his dark eyes fixed on her movements. He did not bow, did not speak. He simply walked forward until he stood a few meters away, shield ready. Sword lowered slightly, as if inviting her to strike first. The signal was given. A loud horn echoed through the arena. Kayla moved first. She dashed across the sand with the speed of a hunting beast, her curved blade flashing toward his neck. The crowd gasped, expecting blood, but the human raised his shield at the perfect moment. Her blade struck metal and slid off harmlessly. Without wasting a breath, he stepped forward and swung his sword low toward her legs. She jumped back, just in time. Sand sprang beneath her feet. They circled each other. Kayla's eyes studied him, did not seem tired even after blocking her strongest opening strike. Most warriors would already be breathing hard, but his chest rose and fell with slow control. She attacked again, faster this time. Her blade danced in a flurry of cuts and thrusts, each aimed at a weak spot in his armor. Like it was part of his arm, meeting each blow with precision. The sound of steel hitting steel rang through the arena. Rylan countered suddenly. His sword flashed toward her side, forcing her to twist away. She barely avoided the strike, but in that moment she felt something strange. His attack was not only strong, it was intelligent. Every move had purpose. Every step was meant to trap her. The duel grew faster. The sand beneath them marked with lines and circles from their footwork. Kayla's breathing grew heavier, her arms starting to ache from the constant strikes. Had never fought someone who could block her so completely. The crowd was silent now, their eyes locked on the two fighters. The sound of weapons clashing was the only noise in the great arena. Kayla decided to use one of her most dangerous techniques, a spinning slash that could cut through armor. She feinted left, then turned her whole body into a spinning attack. Her curved blade aiming for his neck. Rylan moved before the strike could land. He stepped into her spin, his shield slamming into her arm with controlled force. Her blade flew from her hand and clattered onto the sand. She stumbled, shocked, and before she could recover, his sword was in position.
Oh.
The sharp edge rested just close enough to her throat that one step forward would end the duel. The crowd gasped. The alien princess, their undefeated champion, stood weaponless before the human. Her chest rose and fell quickly, sweat glistening on her forehead. She looked up into his eyes. They were not filled with hatred or arrogance. They were calm, like the sea before a storm. Rylan lowered his weapon slightly, taking one step back. He could have ended it, but he chose not to. Kayla stood frozen. For a moment, her pride burning inside her chest. No one had ever beaten her before, yet here she was, defeated in front of thousands. And the one who bested her was not even from her world. The announcer declared the victor. Commander Rylan of Earth. The crowd cheered. But there was an undercurrent of shock. Kayla's hands tightened into fists at her sides. This human had not just beaten her in combat, he had shattered the image of her invincibility. And somewhere deep inside, past the sting of defeat, she felt something else she did not want to admit: curiosity. As the human turned to leave the arena, Kela's gaze followed him. This was not over. Not for her, not for the Shivan Empire. Her weapon clattered to the ground, the sharp sound echoing across the silent arena. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Thousands of eyes were locked on the alien princess, standing unarmed before the human champion. His blade was so close to her throat she could feel the faint breath of wind from its edge. Kela's chest rose and fell quickly, each breath sharp. She had never been in this position before, vulnerable, defeated, exposed in front of her people. Pride had always been her shield, but right now, pride felt heavy, almost crushing. The human's dark eyes stayed on hers. There was no mockery in them, no hunger for humiliation, only a calm focus, as if victory was not a thing to be celebrated, but a duty to be completed. Slowly, Ryland stepped back, lowering his sword, giving her space. The announcer's voice rang out across the stone walls, declaring him the winner. The crowd roared, some in anger, others in disbelief. This was their princess, their strongest warrior, and she had been beaten by an offworlder. Kela bent down and picked up her blade. The weight felt different now, heavier, like it no longer belonged to her. She slid it back into its sheath and looked at the human. He had already turned to leave the arena, his back straight, his steps steady. Something inside her twisted. She should have hated him. She should have sworn vengeance. But the memory of his calm eyes, the precision of his movements, and the strength behind his every strike stayed in her mind as she walked out of the arena. The whispers followed her. She was too slow. The human is stronger than we thought. This will shame the royal family. Each word cut deeper than any blade. In the private chambers beneath the arena, Kela removed her armor piece by piece. The attendants avoided her eyes, their hands quick and careful. She could feel their fear, not fear of her temper, but fear of what her defeat might mean for the Empire. A knock came at the door. One of the high commanders entered, his face stern. "You fought well, princess," he said, though his tone was heavy with disappointment. She met his gaze. "I lost," she replied simply. "You must remember our law," he said. "Champion who defeats you has the right to claim you as an ally, as a prize, or as property." The words made her stomach tighten. It was an ancient law rarely used, and she had never thought it would apply to her. No one had ever defeated her before. She dismissed the attendants and sat alone in the chamber. The law meant she could refuse, but refusal would bring shame to her, people, and to her father's throne. Yet if she accepted, it would mean giving herself to a human. She closed her eyes and saw again the way Rylan had fought. No wasted movement, no fear, no arrogance. Even when he had the chance to strike her down, he had spared her. That alone set him apart from the warriors she knew. The decision weighed on her, but the more she thought, the clearer it became. She could not let this defeat be the end of her story. She needed to understand this man, to learn from him, maybe even to use him for a greater purpose. By the time the sun dipped low in the alien sky, she had made her choice. When she found him, he was in the training grounds outside the arena, cleaning. His blade, his movements were slow and methodical, each pass of the cloth precise. He looked up when she approached, his expression unreadable. "You fought with honor," she said, her voice steady, though her heart beat hard. "You fought well," he replied. "Better than most I've faced." She stepped closer, holding his gaze. "According to our law, you have the right to claim me." He frowned slightly. "I have no need for a slave." "It is not about need," she said. "It is about what I choose to give. I offer myself to you, not out of weakness, but by my own will." His eyes narrowed, studying her as if trying to see through her words. "Why?" "Because you defeated me," she said, "and because there is more I wish to learn from you." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "If you come with me, you do so as a warrior, not a prisoner. I don't chain those who fight beside me." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then I will fight beside you." The next morning, The entire city watched as the alien princess walked beside the human champion through the great gates, leaving her palace behind. Some called it betrayal, others called it disgrace. But Kayla walked with her head high, knowing her path was now tied to his. High above the walls, her father watched from the balcony, his expression dark. He did not call her back. Whether it was wisdom or pride that kept him silent, no one could tell, far beyond the gates. Under the fading light of the twin suns, two figures walked toward a horizon neither could predict: the defeated princess and the human who had changed everything. She lifted her head, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "Take me, I belong to you now." The words hung in the air like a blade suspended over both of them. The human did not move at first. Ryland stood with his sword, still sheathed at his side, his dark eyes locked on hers. He searched her face for a trick, for some hidden weapon in her words, but found none. Around them, the training ground grew quiet. The alien warriors nearby froze mid-strike. Even the winds seemed to pause. They had all heard the ancient law, but no one had ever seen it carried out by choice. Usually, the victor claimed the prize without asking. Here, the defeated princess was offering herself willingly. Ryland's voice was calm, almost too calm. "You mean the law that binds the defeated to the victor's will?" "Yes," Kayla replied. "You have the right, but I am not here because of the law alone. I choose this." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" She stepped closer until she was only a few feet from him. "Because I know strength when I see it. My people follow the strong. If I am to regain my honor, I must walk beside the one who defeated me." Some would have called her words clever politics, but Ryland heard something else under them, a note of challenge. As if she was daring him to refuse. "You could return to your palace," he said. "You could pretend this never happened." Kayla shook her head. "The people saw my defeat. If I hide, they will see me as weak. If I walk beside you, they will see me as clever. Maybe they will see you as part of us." Ryland did not answer right away. He looked past her, toward the horizon where the twin suns burned low. A decision like this could not be taken lightly. He had no interest in trophies or slaves. He had fought for honor, not for chains. But there was something in her eyes, a mixture of pride, shame, fierce determination that told him she was not simply surrendering. Finally, he said, "If you come with me, it will not be as property. You will fight beside me. You will earn your place." Kayla's lips curved in a faint smile. "That is all I ask." The crowd of watching warriors began to whisper, some angry, others intrigued. In the Shivan Empire, warriors were claimed to serve, not to stand equal. What this human was offering her broke tradition as much as her defeat had. Ryland turned and began walking toward the gates of the training ground. "Come then, princess. Your new path begins now," she followed. Without hesitation, the journey out of the city was unlike anything Kayla had ever experienced. No royal escort, no banners, no soldiers marching in perfect lines. Only the human champion, walking with steady, deliberate steps, his armor clinking softly. She carried her own pack, her curved blade strapped to her back. People along the streets stopped to stare. Some spat insults under their breath, calling her a traitor. Others whispered that perhaps she had found a way to bind the human to her cause. Ryland seemed unaffected by the looks and words. He did not speed up or slow down, and his gaze stayed forward. When they reached the outer gates, Kayla glanced back one last time. The high towers of her father's palace shimmered in the fading sunlight. Somewhere behind those walls her father was watching, perhaps with anger, perhaps with something else entirely. She turned away and kept walking. Night fell as they reached the edge of the great forests. The twin moons rose, bathing the world in silver light. Ryland stopped and began setting up a small camp. No servants, no elaborate tents, only a small fire and a blanket rolled out on the ground. Kayla watched him work. "You travel light," she said. "I travel fast," he replied. "Luxury slows you down." She crouched near the fire, holding her hands toward its warmth. The forest beyond the firelight was full of strange sounds, rustling leaves, distant calls of night creatures. She was used to sleeping in guarded chambers. Out here, she realized the only guard was the man across from her. "Why did you really spare me?" she asked. He looked up from sharpening his blade. "'Cause killing you would have been easy. And I don't take the easy path if it leads to nothing." His answer left her silent for a moment. Why? She thought about the duel again, the way he had moved, the way he had stepped into her spin and ended the fight without ending her life. She realized he could have humiliated her further, but he hadn't. That, more than anything, brought her here. Later, as the fire burned low, Rylan spoke again. "If you travel with me, there will be danger. I have enemies who will not care that you are a princess." Kayla met his gaze. "I am not afraid of danger. I am afraid of wasting my life doing nothing." For the first time since they left the city, he smiled. It was small, but it was real. Under the quiet watch of the twin moons, human champion and the alien princess sat across from each other, neither fully trusting, neither fully understanding, yet both sensing that this strange alliance would change more than just their own lives. Far in the forest, unseen eyes watched from the shadows. The night was not as empty as it seemed. Under the cold light of the twin moons, they walked side by side, she in chains of tradition, he carrying no chains at all. The forest path was narrow, roots twisting through the soil like hidden traps. Rylan moved with the calm pace of someone who had walked through dangerous lands many times before. Kayla followed close, her curved blade at her side, though she noticed he carried no spare weapon for her. If trouble came, she would fight with what she had or die beside him. The night air was sharp, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant smoke. Somewhere ahead, the faint sound of running water hinted at a river. Behind them, the city lights of the Shivan capital were fading, swallowed by the darkness of the forest. Kayla broke the silence first. "You could have taken a faster road." Rylan didn't slow his step. Faster roads have more eyes. Eyes mean trouble. She studied him in the moonlight. His armor was plain, but every piece was placed for a reason. He didn't waste words or movement, even the way he shifted his weight as he walked seemed deliberate, balanced, ready for a fight at any second. The deeper they went, the thicker the shadows became. Strange calls echoed from the treetops, followed by the faint rustle of something large moving in the distance. Kella's people avoided these woods after sunset. Too many had vanished here without a trace. Rylan stopped suddenly, diving hand for silence. Kayla froze, her grip tightening on her blade. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. A moment later, he relaxed and kept walking. "Deer," he said simply. "Big ones, but not hunting us." She frowned. "You can tell, just from a sound?" He gave a small shrug. "When you've been hunted enough, you learn who's coming for you and who's not." They reached the river by midnight. The water shimmered in the moonlight, rushing over smooth stones. Rylan knelt and refilled his canteen, motioning for her to do the same. She hesitated in the palace. Water was brought to her in crystal pitchers. Here she had to kneel on cold rock and dip her hands into the icy stream. He noticed her pause. "Water doesn't care if you're a princess," he said. "Drink or go thirsty." She dipped her hands into the water and drank. It was colder than she expected, but clean and sharp, washing away the dryness in her throat. When they made camp, it was in a small clearing ringed with thick bushes. Rylan built the fire quickly, each movement practiced. Kayla watched in silence, unwilling to admit she had never made a fire in her life. When the flames finally caught, the light revealed his face more clearly. There were scars along his jaw and temple, not deep, but enough to show he had seen real battles. She asked, "How many fights have you won?" He poked the fire with a stick, his eyes on the glowing embers. "Enough to still be here." Later, as the fire warmed the air, she heard the sound of footsteps outside the clearing. Not deer. Too slow. Too deliberate. Rylan heard it too. He rose without a word, drawing his sword. The sound came again, closer this time. Kayla drew her curved blade and moved to his side. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall, wearing the jagged armor of the Varkal Raiders. His helmet was shaped like a beast's skull, his weapon a hooked spear. Rylan didn't speak. He charged. The clash was sudden and loud, steel striking steel. Kayla moved to flank the raider, but two more shapes emerged from the darkness, cutting her off. She fought fiercely, her blade flashing in the firelight. The raiders pressed hard, but she was faster, weaving between their strikes. She caught one across the leg, sending him to the ground. Rylan fought like a storm, no wasted motion, each strike ending in blood or broken steel. He blocked the spear with his shield, stepped inside the raider's guard, and slammed the man to the ground. When the last raider fled into the trees, the clearing was quiet again, except for their breathing. Kayla wiped her blade clean on the grass. They were hunting us. Rylan nodded. They weren't hunting. They were testing. Next time, they'll bring more. She stared into the fire. In the palace, danger had always been a distant word. Out here, it was a living thing, breathing just beyond the firelight. When the camp grew quiet, she spoke again. You could have let me fight them alone. It would have been easier for you if I died. Rylan glanced at her. I don't fight beside someone just to watch them fall. If you're with me, you stay alive. That's the rule. She didn't know whether to take it as kindness or command. But she realized something. The human had already risked himself for her twice. Once in the duel by sparing her life, and now in the forest by standing at her side. For the first time in her life, Kayla felt safer outside her palace walls than within them. The fire burned low, shadows stretching long across the clearing. Somewhere in the darkness, the forest waited, full of eyes and dangers neither of them could yet see. The forest exploded with movement, and the human moved faster than her eyes could follow. One moment Kayla was sitting by the fire, sharpening her blade. The next, the trees around them seemed to shiver and break. Dark shapes burst from the undergrowth, their eyes glowing with a hungry, unnatural light. The air filled with a deep, throaty growl that made her skin prickle. Rylan was already on his feet, sword drawn, shield raised. His voice was sharp. Stay close to me. The attackers moved into the firelight, massive beasts with long, lean bodies and spines running down their backs. Their claws scraped the ground as they circled the clearing. They were not mindless animals. They moved with intent, cutting off escape routes. Kella's breath quickened. She had heard of the Nightfang's predators that hunted in silence until the moment they struck. They could rip through armor like it was cloth. Met them in the dark ever survived. The first beast lunged. Rylan stepped forward, shield braced, taking the impact head on. The force pushed him back a step, but his sword came up in a clean arc, slicing into the creature's shoulder. It shrieked and fell back. Another Nightfang leapt from the left. Kayla spun, her curved blade flashing in the firelight, catching the beast across the snout. Blood sprayed, and the creature staggered, but did not fall. Three more burst into the clearing, the ground trembling under their weight. Rylan's voice was steady. We hold this ground. We run. They will pick us off. Kayla nodded, moving. To cover his flank, the beasts came in waves. Teeth, claws, snarls. The air was filled with the sound of steel meeting flesh. Kella's arms burned from the effort, but adrenaline kept her moving. A Nightfang lunged low, its jaws aiming for her legs. She leaped back just in time, bringing her blade down in a powerful strike. Steel cut deep into its neck, and the beast collapsed. Twitching, Rylan fought like a wall of iron. Every blow he struck ended with a Nightfang stumbling or falling. His shield absorbed hit after hit, the leather straps straining under the force. But the creatures were learning. They began to feint, drawing attacks, then striking from the opposite side. One leaped high, aiming for Rylan's head. Kayla moved. Without thinking, slashing upward, catching the beast in midair, it crashed to the ground between them. Their eyes met briefly. No words were needed. The last two Night Fangs circled warily. Their bodies were slick with blood, their own and their pack's. With a sudden, bone-rattling roar, they lunged together. Rylan met the first head-on, slamming his shield into its chest, then driving his sword through its heart. The second went for Kella's side, but she spun, letting its momentum carry it past her. As it skidded in the dirt, she drove her blade into its spine. The clearing went still, except for the sound of their heavy breathing. The fire crackled, casting flickering light on the carnage around them. Kayla lowered her weapon, her arms trembling from exhaustion. "You said they'd bring more next time," she said, her voice unsteady. Rylan wiped his blade clean on a fallen beast's fur. These weren't the raiders. These were drawn by the smell of blood. She glanced at the dark forest beyond the firelight. "More will come, maybe," he said, "but not tonight. They hunt in short bursts. We killed enough to make them think twice." Sat by the fire, the corpses cooling in the night air. Kella's hands still shook. She had fought in arenas before crowds of thousands, but nothing compared to fighting for her life in the dark against something that wanted her dead for no reason but hunger. Rylan tossed a few more sticks into the flames. "You held your ground," he said simply. She looked at him, unsure if it was a compliment or just a statement of fact. "Would you have left me if I hadn't?" He shook his head. "If you fall, I fall. That's how I fight." At his words, stayed with her. In the palace, warriors fought to protect themselves first, others second. Here he spoke as if their survival was tied together. Later, as the fire burned low, Kayla cleaned her blade slowly, her thoughts circling back to the duel in the arena, to the moment she had chosen to follow him. She had told herself it was for honor, for strategy. But tonight, when the beasts had come, she had fought not for her people, not for her pride, but to stand beside him. The forest was quiet now, but the silence felt fragile, as if the world was only resting before the next strike. Kayla glanced at Rylan. He sat with his sword resting across his knees, his eyes scanning the dark as if waiting for another enemy to appear. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the strange pull of something she had never known before: trust. She stared into the fire, her voice breaking. "I offered myself to save my people." Rylan didn't answer at first. He was sitting across from her, sharpening his sword, the steady scrape of steel on stone filling the silence. The flames lit his face in shifting gold and shadow, but his eyes stayed fixed on hers. "Explain," he said finally. Kayla drew a slow breath, as if each word she was about to speak was a stone she had carried for too long. "My father's empire is crumbling. Not because of famine, not because of weakness, but because of one man, a warlord named Varric. He commands more ships than our navy, more soldiers than our armies, and he is not satisfied with his own lands. He wants ours. He wants everything." Reached for a stick and pushed it into the fire, watching the sparks rise. 2 months ago, he sent an ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. My father pretended to negotiate, but the truth is, we cannot win a war against him. Our generals are proud, but pride will not stop Varric's fleets. Rylan listened without interrupting. She went on. "I challenged you in the arena because I knew what would happen. If I lost, tradition would force me to offer myself to the victor. And if the victor was you, a human champion, feared and respected across worlds, then Varric might hesitate. He might think twice before attacking. If he believed I was under your protection," Rylan's brow furrowed. "So this was all a plan," yes, she admitted. "At first, it was only about survival for my people, not for me. But then," her gaze lowered, "then I saw you fight. I saw that you were not like the others. You do not fight for blood or glory. You fight with purpose. And I began to think maybe you could do more than just scare Varric. Maybe you could stop him." The fire crackled between them. Rylan set down the sharpening stone. "And you think I'll fight your war for you?" She met his gaze again. "No. I think you'll fight it for yourself once you know what he's done." Something in her tone made him lean forward. "What has he done?" Her hands curled into fists, forces that resist him. He takes the young 4 soldiers. the strong for labor and leaves the weak to starve. Entire colonies have vanished. My own cousin was among the taken. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to keep going. He is not just a conqueror, he is a destroyer. And if he takes my world, he will not stop there. Rylan was quiet for a long time. His eyes were on the fire, but Kayla could see the tension in his jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I have fought men like him before. Fall. The question is, how much they take with them before they do. Kayla leaned forward. Then help me. Not as a princess begging for aid, but as a warrior asking another warrior to stand with her. Rylan's gaze met hers, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that this was no longer about tradition or honor. This was about survival. I will think on it, he said. But if I agree, we fight on my terms. And we fight to win, not to delay. She nodded. Agreed. The next morning, they broke camp early. The forest was still damp from the nights. Mist, and the light filtering through the trees, felt cold. They walked in silence for hours, each lost in thought. Kayla wondered if she had revealed too much. Trust was not something her people gave easily, and she had given him more than just trust. She had given him her kingdom's weakness. But every time she looked at him, walking with steady purpose, scanning the trees for threats, she felt a strange calm. If anyone could face Varric and not break, it was him. By midday, they reached the ridge that overlooked the valley below. From here, they could see the river winding like silver through the land. Smoke rose from a small village. In the distance, Kella's steps slowed. That village is not supposed to be burning. Rylan followed her gaze, his expression hardening. Without a word, he adjusted the strap on his shield and started down the slope. They reached the outskirts quickly, moving from tree cover to the edge of the fields. The smell of smoke was thick, and the faint cries of villagers carried on the wind. Kayla felt her pulse quicken. If this is Varric's work, he is already closer than I thought. Rylan glanced back at her. And your plan to use me as a warning won't work. Warnings don't stop men who are already at your gates. Her grip tightened on her blade. Then we stop him here. They moved into the burning village, their steps light and silent. Figures in black armor moved among the flames, dragging villagers into the open. Kayla recognized the jagged symbol on their chests. Varric soldiers. Rylan's voice was a whisper. Take them fast. No survivors among them. Kayla nodded, her heart pounding. This was no longer about plans or politics. This was war. The sun rose over the battlefield and the human stood at the front, the alien princess at his side. The burning village had been the spark. By the time Rylan and Kayla drove Varric's soldiers from the fields, word had already spread. Villages rallied. Fighters came from the hills and riverlands. Old weapons were pulled from hiding. In less than a week, a force stood ready, smaller than Varric's army, but fierce and determined now. They faced him in the open. Across the wide plain, Varric's war machines rolled forward, huge metal beasts spitting smoke into the morning air. His soldiers marched in black armor, shields high, spears ready. At the center, on a raised platform, pulled by 6 armored beasts, sat Varric himself, a mountain of a man with a heavy blade across his lap. Kayla gripped her curved sword. Armor was dented from days of fighting, her hair tied back, her eyes fixed on the warlord. You will come for me first, she said quietly. Rylan adjusted his shield strap. Then he will find me waiting. The first clash came like a wave hitting stone. Varric's soldiers surged forward, their black armor glinting under the sun. Rylan met them head-on, shield slamming into the first rank, sword cutting through gaps in their defense. Kayla moved beside him, her blade flashing in quick arcs, striking. Before the enemy could react, the sound of battle roared. Steel on steel, war cries, the thud of bodies hitting the ground. Dust rose around them, stinging eyes and lungs. Rylan fought with calm precision, his strikes clean and purposeful. Every step he took pushed the enemy back. Kayla fought like fire, fast and unpredictable, weaving through the chaos to strike at weak points. Together, they carved a path toward the center where Varric waited. The warlord rose from his platform as they approached, his massive frame casting a long shadow. His voice boomed across the field. So, the princess hides behind. A human now. Tell me, Earthman, will you die for her? Ryland's answer was a cold smile. No, but you will die for nothing. Varric roared and leaped from the platform, landing with a crash that shook the ground. His blade came down like a falling tree, meeting Ryland's shield with a thunderous impact. The force drove Ryland to one knee, but he twisted and shoved back. Forcing Varric a step away, Kayla struck from the side, her curved blade cutting a deep line in Varric's armor. The warlord turned on her, swinging wide, but she ducked under and rolled clear. The fight drew a circle around them as soldiers from both sides stopped to watch. The clash of champions was the heart of the battle. Varric pressed hard each strike. Heavy enough to break bone if it landed clean, Ryland's shield took the worst of it, his arm straining with every blow. Kayla darted in and out, landing quick cuts before Varric could turn on her. But the warlord was strong and smart. He feinted toward Ryland, then spun. Kayla with the flat of his blade and sending her sprawling in the dirt. Ryland moved fast, driving his sword into Varric's side. The warlord roared in pain and slammed a gauntleted fist into Ryland's chest, knocking him back. For a moment, both sides saw their champions stagger. The battle hung in the balance. Kayla forced herself to her feet, blood on her lip, vision swimming. She saw Ryland rise again, shield dented, sword still in hand. He stepped forward without hesitation. Varric swung down with all his strength, but Ryland caught the blow on his shield, twisted his body, and drove his blade upward, slipping it under the warlord's arm, where the armor was weakest. The steel slid deep. Varric's roar turned into a gasp. His huge form swayed, then crashed to the ground, shaking the earth. For a moment, silence covered the field. Then the black-armored soldiers began to drop their weapons. The war machine stilled. Tide broke. Kayla stood beside Ryland, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "It's over," she said, though it felt strange to say the words. Ryland looked at her, his voice steady. "For now, but there will always be another battle." She gave a small, tired smile. "Then we fight them together." When they returned to the capital, the streets were lined with people. Some cheered for their princess, others for the human, who had stood between them and destruction. Kayla walked through the gates with her head high. This time, she was not walking alone. Ryland walked beside her, not as her captor, not as her victor, but as her equal. That night, as the city celebrated, they stood on the high balcony of the palace. The lights of the streets glittered below, and beyond the walls, the dark forest. Stretched into the horizon, Ryland rested his hands on the railing. "Your people will rebuild," Kayla nodded, "and they will remember who stood with them when they had no hope." He glanced at her. "That was you." She shook her head. "It was us." Somewhere in the distance, the wind carried the scent of rain. The world beyond still waited, full of dangers they had yet to face. But for tonight, under the quiet watch of the twin moons, the human champion and the alien princess stood together, ready for whatever came next.